Okay, so there's a story brewing in the tech world that you really need to pay attention to. On the surface, it's about a new navigation app in India. But when you look closer, it's a classic David versus Goliath fight with a huge geopolitical twist. This isn't just about market share, it's a fantastic case study in digital sovereignty, national strategy, and how a simple map can become a serious power play in this new era of global competition.
And to really get what's happening, you have to start with this quote from Sridhar Vembu, who's a giant in Indian tech. He's not just talking about some new app, he's completely reframing the conversation. See, this isn't some scrappy startup taking a wild shot at Google. He's saying this is the end result of decades of strategic investment. It's a long game, a patient game of technological chess.
So, how does a story like this break out from the tech pages and become a national headline? Well, it starts with a signal, a very clear signal, right from the top. A key government minister goes on social media, and what looks like a simple app recommendation is actually a very deliberate message to the market, to investors, and to Google itself.
Look, this is way more than just an endorsement. This is a policy statement packed into a tweet. And the magic word here is Swadeshi. It means homegrown. In the world of industrial policy, that's a blinking red light. It signals a clear commitment to building up a national champion, and it's a direct challenge to the company that owns the market.
Right, that word, Swadeshi, that's the key that unlocks this entire strategy. You have to understand, this isn't just a one-off thing. It's a very specific move inside a much larger national policy, one that has huge implications for any global company trying to do business in India.
And that policy is called Atmanirbhar Bharat, or Self-Reliant India. This is the playbook. Honestly, you can think of it as India's version of Made in China 2025, or America's CHIPS Act. It's all about de-risking from global supply chains, building up your own national champions, and, crucially, controlling the digital infrastructure of your economy. And in that world, maps are just as critical as semiconductors.
So this slide breaks down the strategic thinking. Data sovereignty, that's about controlling the new oil. National security, that's about making sure a foreign power doesn't control the arteries of your country's logistics. I mean, you can see why that's important. And economic self-reliance, well, that's just about making sure the value, the profits, are captured at home instead of all flowing out to Silicon Valley.
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does this homegrown challenger, Maps, actually stack up against the undisputed global heavyweight, Google Maps? Because it's a really fascinating contrast, both in their strategy and their tech.
Now, the argument for a domestic alternative isn't just political theory. It gets very real, very fast. Tragic incidents like this one, they're a powerful reminder that a global platform, no matter how advanced it is, can have some really dangerous blind spots. It becomes a very powerful argument for a solution that's built on deep local knowledge. And this is where you see the challenger's strategy in action. Mappls isn't trying to build a better Google for the entire world. No way. It's trying to build a better map for India. By zeroing in on these hyperlocal problems like incredibly complex city flyovers, it's using a classic asymmetric strategy. It's attacking a niche where Google's massive global scale is actually a disadvantage, not an advantage.
When you put them side by side like this, the strategic trade-offs just leap off the page. Mappls is betting on depth over breadth. It's investing in super granular, on-the-ground data, potholes, speed breakers. That's incredibly relevant to an Indian driver. Google, on the other hand, is leveraging its massive scale, offering a suite of features that are amazing for sure, but maybe not perfectly tailored to these very specific local challenges.
Okay, for anyone watching this from a policy or an investment angle, this slide right here is the whole ballgame. Mappls has brilliantly turned a regulatory headache for its competitors into a core feature. By guaranteeing that all data stays in India, it aligns itself perfectly with the government's agenda. For Google, data sovereignty is a huge regulatory risk. For Mappls, it's a government-endorsed competitive moat.
And their business models couldn't be more different. Mappls is going top-down. It's a B2G, business to government, and a B2B play, using its political alignment to lock in huge, long-term government contracts. Google's model is completely bottom-up, built on the incredible network effects of its consumer Android ecosystem. So what you have is a clash between a state-backed enterprise play and a consumer-driven advertising machine.
This timeline really highlights a critical advantage that's easy to overlook: time and experience. MapmyIndia has been dealing with India's complex regulatory landscape for decades. That 11-year delay for Google Street View, that wasn't just some random bureaucratic delay. It was a clear demonstration of the serious barriers to entry for foreign companies. That is a home field advantage that is very, very hard to replicate.
So, what does the road ahead look like?
What are the real strategic implications of this whole situation, not just for these two companies, but for the entire global technology landscape?
Well, first off, the initial numbers are pretty encouraging. Over 35 million downloads. That shows you there's a real appetite in the market for a homegrown alternative. That government seal of approval is clearly driving people to at least try it, and that gives the challenger a crucial foothold.
But this is the move that could really tip the scales. A partnership with Indian Railways is not just another big contract, it's a strategic coup. If you integrate your technology with one of the world's largest logistics networks, you gain an incredibly deep and defensible position in the B2B and government space. At that point, your consumer market share almost becomes a secondary issue. This is how you build a national champion.
But let's be realistic. The road ahead is not easy. There are huge hurdles. There's a clear tech and user experience gap they need to close. But the biggest obstacle of all is the power of the default. Google Maps is pre-installed on basically every Android smartphone in India. Overcoming that level of user inertia is a monumental task. It's going to require more than just a good product. It requires a fundamental shift in how people behave. And this brings us to the big, multi-trillion-dollar question for the future of the internet. Is this just an isolated skirmish in one country, or are we witnessing the beginning of a great unbundling, a move away from a world run by a handful of global tech platforms towards a much more fragmented landscape of national digital champions? The battle for India's maps might just be drawing the first lines on this new map of digital geopolitics.